Hello, beautiful friend. In this video, we are going to take a deep dive into the SNOO, and I want to tell you all the things and whether I think it's a solid investment or you should skip it and try something else. Coming up. Hey there, welcome back to my channel. If you happen to be new, my name's Nicole, and on this channel you are going to learn all things parenting. Think child development, think parenting tips, intentional parenting, conscious parenting, and yes, of course, some amazing product recommendations and reviews. So today's video is sponsored by SNOO. They did send me a SNOO to review in full transparency, so although this video is sponsored, I'm giving you all the tea. It is going to be a very honest breakdown of our journey with the SNOO for 6 months with Naya. So let's dive right into it. So first things first, I do have to say SNOO did a wonderful job with packaging and making it so easy to assemble this thing. I feel, this is my second time around being a parent, that assembling a SNOO is probably one of the easiest things you will assemble when it comes to baby products. Even my husband was like pleasantly surprised. He's like, it's beautiful. A+ SNOO for packaging and assembly. All right, so how does it stack up though? Like, that's great. It looks beautiful. We could put it together. But when it comes to delivering on its promise, does it work? So what you guys are about to see are clips that I recorded at 1 month, at 2 months, at 3 months, so on and so forth. And it's just giving my analysis of how the SNOO was working for us at that time. So let's jump into 1 month with the SNOO. Okay, so I'm filming notes for the SNOO review during Naya's first month of life. Okay, so here are my thoughts and notes. Well, a few things that stand out to me is the lower settings are definitely the way to go when you have a newborn. A couple of times the SNOO ramped up to the higher levels to soothe her while she was crying, and it felt like it was a bit too much, even though I know that all of these levels are supposed to be safe for newborns and up. But we definitely used the lock feature and kept the SNOO's capabilities limited to a level 2. What's great and what we loved is that while we limited the motion, we were still able to allow the sound of the higher levels to come in. So that's great. And it didn't take a whole lot to soothe her in the early days. So I felt like it was a really great match. Closer to 1 month, we started to see some reflux pop up and definitely a lot of gas. So the SNOO met its match. And it's a bit of a mixed review at this point because we've had to unlock the levels as she has grown, and she has definitely grown. We feel more comfortable with the SNOO using its full capabilities. With that being said, we find that the SNOO does really well with Naya on the first leg of her sleep at night. So, after she's had a full day and we put her down and she's been fed, the SNOO does a great job of keeping her happy for about 4 to 6 hours. And this is even, my child is a very loud sleeper. We hear grunts and dolphin noises and cat noises all night long, and we think she's awake and she's not, she's dreaming. So I think that the SNOO has learned that Naya is sleeping and she's not actually awake. And maybe that's because for the most part, she's relatively still. When she makes noises, unless she has gas, then she starts moving her legs more. The SNOO won't ramp up, which for the most part has been good because she's asleep and she's dreaming. She's just loud. However, recently we have found that we need the SNOO to ramp up. And she's starting to get fussy. So she's like not in a deep sleep and she's about to wake up. And I'll hear her And if I had my phone, I would manually ramp up the level, but the SNOO isn't doing it in time. And so she's waking up and crying. So that's been a little difficult because I don't want to have my phone on me in the middle of the night and be like monitoring the SNOO and Naya. And we've also noticed that as she's gotten older, it's harder to put her back in the SNOO after she wakes around 2 a.m. to feed. So she'll wake up like once in the middle of the night to feed, and then we try putting her back down. And I don't know if it's because she has a full belly or she's working on more gas, but even with the leg lifters, she's generally quite fussy, and the SNOO is bouncing up and down trying to soothe her. And my husband and I eventually just get frustrated and pull her out and put her in between us and our bed. So as of very lately, though, the last couple of days, she's done okay back in the SNOO. So I have a feeling that as her gut starts to mature and she's able to manage gas a little bit better, her and the SNOO are going to be a really good fit. I just think that we're at a really awkward point where she has a lot of gas. It's painful. She's really uncomfortable sometimes after her feeds. And even the slight incline from the SNOO's leg lift isn't enough to have her feel comfortable. So she's waking up more. And I don't think the SNOO knows what to do with her because she's also a loud dreamer. So it might just be confused as to whether she's actually awake or if she's dreaming. So we've been tussling a lot. And then in terms of daytime naps, Naya doesn't do great in the SNOO for daytime naps unless she's exhausted. So what we're trying to go back to is, and this is, I think, the recommended way to do this, is to have her in the SNOO swaddle before we place her in the bassinet. Because up until this point, we've just been putting her in the swaddle sack inside the bassinet. So, and she did okay with that. It wasn't an issue. But now we're finding it might be to our benefit to have the swaddle sack out and put her in it before she's like super drowsy. That way we're not fussing with the Velcro once she's actually asleep and trying to put her in. So we'll see if that makes a big difference. I feel like there is a learning curve. I feel like there is a bit of trial and error in terms of your baby's needs and the SNOO's capabilities. In terms of the log on the SNOO, we don't use that really because, well, for one, because we were not actually removing the swaddle from the bassinet. We were literally just unzipping her and taking her out of the swaddle. The SNOO thinks that she's in it, and so the log isn't even accurate. And also, even if we had taken her out, the swaddle out, we prefer, if we do have her in the bed with us, that the SNOO is still producing white noise. So we wouldn't have turned it off anyways. So we don't really use the log in terms of tracking her sleep. I have a fairly good idea of how much this little one is sleeping, and being a second-time mama, I'm not overly concerned with that. She does pretty well, all things considered. So yeah, you know, at this point, would I be head over heels and say jump at $1,500? Yes and no. If this is your first kiddo and you plan on having more, absolutely. It's an investment, and the more kids that are going to get to use this type of technology, I think the better. If you're planning on just having one kid, or if this is your last kid, you might prefer to rent or buy used to trial this and see if this is going to be a long-term match for you and your baby. Because at 1 month, again, I have some mixed feelings. Overall, I'm happy with the product, but it's not a cure-all. And I think that a lot of parents who are dropping $1,500 on a product want a freaking cure-all. And I would say that that's probably really high expectations at this point. So but I do have faith that as she gets a bit older, that this is only going to get better. So I'm excited to update again in a few weeks and let you guys know what 1 to 2 months looks like in the SNOO. Okay, notes for the SNOO for month 2. I feel like month 2 is the golden age for the SNOO thus far. It has been the most compatible for Naya in terms of just like getting into a groove with it. I've witnessed the SNOO multiple times in this age range just put her to sleep. Like the sensory input from the shaking and the noise was just right. It wasn't too much where she was like overstimulated, and it wasn't understimulating where she was looking for more. So the two of them fell into like a beautiful rhythm, and she had very long stretches of sleep. I clocked like her longest night at about 10 hours, which is incredible for a 2-month-old. You're like actually waking up like, are you awake yet? You like should be awake. So definitely increased the amount of sleep for her. A couple of things that I noted about the SNOO that I wish could be updated or changed is, one, I wish that as the SNOO ramps up the input and the noise to calm your baby, once your baby's calm, it comes back down in intervals. So if Naya was asleep and good, it would like move down each level, I think maybe every 3 minutes or so. I wish there was a way to extend the amount of time, because sometimes I feel like she needs to hang out at a level 2 for like 5 minutes or 6 minutes before it drops down to a level 1, if that makes sense. And there's no way to increase the amount of time that the SNOO stays in each level before dropping down. The second biggest thing, this is the biggest thing, I'm surprised that I haven't heard about this yet, is I wish there were notifications for when it's ramping up or either coming back down, because until it stops, you don't get a notification. And I've checked the settings and everything, and I don't see a way to adjust this. So you're only notified if your child is pissed off and the SNOO couldn't do anything for your kid. It'd be nice to know that like, oh, hey, Naya's needing to be soothed. We're at a level 2, 3, whatever it is. Because I didn't actually have a baby camera in the room. So I'd have to listen for her because I wouldn't get notifications. So maybe most people have a baby camera and it's not an issue, but I wanted to avoid using one. So it would have been nice to have the notifications. Okay, so the 3-month mark.
Oh, you're not talking to me.
No. The 3-month mark was the start of harmony, I think, between Naya and the SNOO. It was like the first major point in her life where it just was really easy. Like there wasn't any resistance. It was very easy to put her down regardless of the time of day, and for her to just fall into the rhythm that the SNOO is offering and go to sleep. No back and forth, just very easy. And it was like the point where I was like, oh, hallelujah, I get it. It's worth every penny. This is glorious. This is so glorious. So I say it really gets easy around the 3-month mark. You figure out the quirks. And also the 3-month mark is the point where I feel like you feel like your baby's really sturdy. So the varying levels of the SNOO don't seem to worry you so much. You're like, oh yeah, the head bobbling, she's fine. So really loved that. Heading into the 4 months, a little bit of hiccups, and mostly with napping, I realized that her needs changed. She became much more aware of her environment and her surroundings. And so the SNOO being in our master bedroom might not be the best place for her and the SNOO because there's a lot of light in our room. Like, we don't have blackout curtains in our room. There's a lot of light that filters through the several windows in that room. So we may just need to switch her environment up. Also realize that she's becoming a much lighter sleeper during the day, so it's harder for her to cycle back into sleep. Like, when she completes a sleep cycle, she usually will wake up. Sometimes she can get herself back to sleep. Like, she'll wake up and it's this beautiful thing. I'll kind of watch the camera and the SNOO's still moving, and she'll kind of just like let herself drift back to sleep with the motion, which is beautiful. But many times it's just a really short nap. So I'd say the 4-month mark, you might be playing with your environment a bit more. But overall, I love that she knows the SNOO, and I feel like she feels safe and secure in the SNOO. And we're past the point of power struggling to sleep in the SNOO. Every once in a while she'll fuss or give me a hard time about it, but now it's interesting because there was a point, I'd say right at 3 months, Mike and I felt that the higher levels were actually doing more of a disservice than they were a service. Like, it was almost sensory overload for her. And so we kept the levels lower and would lock it. And that seemed to work for her. And now we're finding the inverse to be true, where she started learning to play with her own voice. So she'll scream sometimes, and she knows that if she cries or if she yells, the SNOO tends to pick up. So sometimes we'll hear her just yell or cry for a quick second, so the SNOO bumps up its level, and usually she is always soothed by the higher levels. Like, if it has to get that high, she's out. It's a rare occasion that the SNOO has to stop and we need to restart it, which is great. However, that being said, we have also hit her first sleep regression, and that's been a little bit more challenging. Some nights the SNOO has had issues just because it's like a combination of sleep regression, gas, teething, and we've had to just pull her and let her be with us. But she's definitely, everyone's better rested when she's in the SNOO is what we're finding. And so I just love that this hasn't been something that worked for a few weeks and, we had to move on from. Like, this is our home base. This is where she sleeps like 90+% of the time. And we're so grateful for it. So yeah, 4 months in, she's doing great. We all still love it. So you guys saw months 1 through 4, and months 5 and 6, I didn't actually record on my phone because we were in Hawaii and traveling, but the gist of month 5 and 6 are similar. And so here are the main points for month 5 and 6. I feel like the SNOO's usefulness starts to decline a bit around the 5-month, 6-month mark, 5-month mark in particular. Naya's needs continue to shift, and having the SNOO up at a super high level no longer soothes her so much as it alerts her, and having the SNOO at a lower level just isn't enough to put her to sleep. It may help calm her, it may help keep her quiet for a bit, but in terms of the SNOO increasing sleep or encouraging sleep, it wasn't really doing much of that anymore. I found myself, my husband found himself going into the nursery often, placing our hand on top of her chest, so her really craving that proprioceptive input, which that zip up swaddle does give some proprioceptive input. But as your child gets older, their sensory needs change. So maybe your kiddo needs more than just their arms being strapped in and them zipped up in that sack. They might actually crave a bit of weight. So we were going in, placing our hands on her chest, giving her even a little bit more of a rock. And then for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because we were just sleep deprived or what, but the snooze noisemaker almost became obnoxious by this point. Like we were really like hatch light all the way. We started, because the snooze noisemaker only turns up so loud, obviously because your baby's head is right next to it, but she needed more. She needed more than the SNOO could give by month 5 and 6. So we were looking for something else for white noise, and we were really giving a lot of external input to her to help her get to sleep. So the SNOO just was a pretty bassinet at that point. But is it worth it? Like when you look at all of my clips holistically and you look at the journey from 1 to 6 months, and knowing that the first few months are probably when your baby needs the most help in establishing a routine, or things are changing so rapidly that like all hands on deck and all the support you can get is like incredibly invaluable, I would honestly say the SNOO's worth it. It's expensive, but it's an investment, and I would still recommend it, even though we didn't get that much use out of it in the last month or so. What's interesting is if I were a first-time mom and I hadn't had the experience of extreme sleep deprivation that I had with Kai, where nothing worked with him and we would have shelled out any amount of money for a good night's rest, if I did not experience that first, I probably would have skipped the SNOO. I would have thought, I don't need this. Baby's gonna learn to sleep. It's all gonna be fine. Like, I don't need a $1,500 intervention to get a good night's sleep. Being a second-time mom and having the experience with our first child that we did, I would shell out more than that, to be honest. Like, I'm glad it doesn't cost more than it does, because it's still an investment, but little things are above a good night's sleep. Like, I don't value much more than a beautiful night's sleep after my experience in motherhood thus far. So yeah, I would do it again. I would honestly do it again. And I believe that for those parents who are in a similar boat as me and have experienced the hardship of a kiddo that just does not learn to sleep through the night until later on, you probably feel me. You're probably with me. You probably have the SNOO. You're probably not even watching this video. If you're a parent who's like, my kid kind of got it together after a few months, they were sleeping through the night, you might reevaluate this. Or I'd say at the very least, consider renting it, use it for a month or so, see if it works. If it doesn't, hey, at least you didn't shell out $1,500. The flip side of that is, if you're going to have multiple children, I think I mentioned this in one of the clips, like, and this is your first time having a kiddo, it could be worth it to buy this, because it's still, you can sell this down the line and still make a decent amount of money if you sell it to another mama who wants to buy it secondhand. So that is my full review on the SNOO. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. I'm happy to answer them. And I am wishing you the most restful sleep that is in short supply, apparently, as new parents. I love you guys. I hope you're doing well, and I will catch you in the very next video.